What's going on, y'all? I'm Czar, and in this video, we're going to be reviewing the Motown Eq from Kit Plugins. This is Kit Plugins' second plugin from the collaboration with Blackbird Studios, and this one is based off the Motown EQ. It's a 7-band passive EQ, and if you're not familiar with Blackbird Studios, it's arguably the best studio in Nashville, and if you're in town, I'd highly recommend hitting them up and seeing if you can get a tour. So we're going to go over the controls, and then I will, of course, let you hear what it sounds like. What's special about this is that this is using what Kit Plugins calls their Generation 2 full range modeling technology, and they say this is their most accurate modeling that they've done in a plugin, which is kind of scary if you think of how good their other plugins are. So we have 7 bands here, which if we just stop right there, that's a lot of bands for an EQ. Most EQs with fixed frequencies will give you, maybe 3-4 bands or 3 or 4 bands that you can switch between the frequencies. But we've got 7 bands here, and we've got +8 and -8 dB on each band. All of these are Bell filters, so the bottom and top are not a shelf. But we've got 50 hertz, 130 hertz, 320, 800, 2K, 5K, and 12.5K. We also have a bypass switch, and we have your gain for the output. Above that, we have 3 options for oversampling, 2 times, 4 times, and 8 times. And the link button here will link the oversampling. So if I click link and I set this to, let's say, 2 times oversampling, any instance that I open up after that will also have the 2 times oversampling. So that's a nice feature there. We'll put it back to 4. And we've got your presets here. Clicking on Kit Plugins logo will take you to the website. And then clicking on help here will get you into the manual. All right, so just looking at the 7 bands that we have here. So everyone has their go-to frequencies, and the first thing I notice here is that we're missing some of my go-tos. I would like to get in between 130 hertz and 320 hertz to cut some mud. But what I found, which you'll hear with this vocal I'm about to play here, is that this 130 hertz does a good job of cutting mud in a vocal. Another one for me is maybe above 12K, like 16K shelf. I like to use that to add air. But again, we'll see here with this vocal, I've only got 3 dB boosted on this 12.5K here, and you really hear it. I've got 1 dB boosted at 5K, and we're cutting 4 dB at 130 hertz. So this is a vocal from Coretta King. No other processing on this except for the Motown Eq. I'm going to bypass it so you can hear what it sounds like with nothing on it. And I'll tell you now, it is a little muddy in the low mids. It definitely needs to be cleaned up some down there, which is why I cut the 4 dB at 130 hertz. And so I'm going to play it with the Motown Eq bypass, and then I'll bring it in and let you hear what it did to this vocal.
Stand by me whenever you in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
All right, and now with the Motown Eq.
Stand by me whenever you in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
All right, so we opened up the top end, we brightened up the vocal, and we cut some of that low mids, making it clear, giving it more clarity. One thing I immediately noticed when using the Motown Eq is that it definitely helps tracks come forward in the mix. And I didn't even, boost the gain here. We've just got, like I said, a couple dB going on the top end here at the 12.5K. All right, let's move to another example. All right, so I've got the Motown Eq on the drum bus here. I've boosted 5 dB at 50 hertz, boosted 3 dB at 130 hertz, cut 2.5 dB at 320 hertz, and boosted let's go ahead and go up to 3 dB at 5K and 3 dB at 12.5K. And I've got it bypassed right now, so these are the drums with no processing on them. And now with the MoQ. All right, so like with the vocal, these drums are now more in your face. I really love what that 50 hertz is doing, adding that punch on the bottom end. And we're also opening up the top end a lot with just 3 dB here of 5K and 12.5K here, which really feels, I mean, even though this is not a shelf when we're not doing a lot of boosting here, is really opening up the top end. All right, let's move on to another example. All right, lastly, we're going to check out the BB MoQ on bass guitar. Again, showing off what this can do for low frequency instruments. We've got 5 dB at 50 hertz, 3 dB at 130 hertz, cut 2 dB at 320, and boosting a little bit at 5K. I've got it bypassed right now. And with the BB MoQ. All right, so adding some low end power there with that 50 hertz, I really like what this 50 hertz does. And I'm more of a 60 hertz guy than a 50, but this is really getting the job done. So final thoughts on the MoQ here. The first thing I will say that I really like that I'm able to click and set the knobs by clicking on the numbers. A lot of plugins do not do that, and honestly, it annoys me. I don't want to have to click a knob and pull it and turn it each time. I'd prefer to click the numbers because a lot of times when I'm EQing, I know exactly what I want, a negative 2 dB here or plus 3 dB here. So I like the UI here where I can just click that, and that makes it simple. This is definitely what I would describe as a character EQ. And some EQs are good at boosting, some are better at cutting. This does good at both, but this is definitely an EQ that I would go to if I want to add some character. And a lot of times, of course, that's going to be from boosting frequencies on it. That top band, the 12.5K, just by looking at this, I would feel like it's not high enough for me. I would want something at like 16K, but that 12.5K really opens up the top end nicely, and it does it without adding a lot. And also, even if I should pull this up with a vocal, but when you take this and even boost it up to 8 dB on that 12.5, it doesn't get too much and continues to be really smooth. It really reminds me in some ways of a Pultec as well, how much you can drive a Pultec and with it still being really smooth. And I mean, of course, Pultec is a passive EQ too, so that might just be a trait of passive EQs. I mean, if it's two things that I love, it's passive EQs and opto compressors. So really big fan of this. And a really cool thing about this is that if you have the BBN 105 version 1, you get a free license for this for 1 year. So if you were a original owner of that, or I call it early adopter of the first version of the BBN 105, you have access to this. It should be in your account now for a year. If you don't have that, the intro price for this right now is $79, which I think is really good for a plugin of this quality and that's doing something a little different versus a lot of other passive EQs out there. I've already tried this against other passive EQs that are normally go-tos for me, which is one by Waves and one by Softtube. And this definitely sounds smoother than both of them. So it looks like this is going to be my new go-to passive EQ right now. Of course, this and Pultecs. If you're a Pultec person, I think you'll be a fan of this EQ as well. And I think this paired with a Pultec, or this in contrast to a Pultec, I think makes for a very good either or situation where you may not want a Pultec, you can reach for this. And then where you reach for this, you may not need a Pultec. So definitely both good to have in your arsenal when it comes to adding character with an EQ. All right, so that's a look at the BB Mo Q, new EQ from Kit Plugins. Definitely comment, let me know what you think. Also, if this looks familiar, Heritage Audio released a rack version of this EQ not too long ago. So if you don't want to spend $2,000 on the rack, you've got a plug-in version right here. All right, I've got a link in the description if you want to check this out, learn more about it, or pick it up. If you enjoyed this video, I appreciate a thumbs up. And if you want to continue to see content from me, then you know what to do. All right, any questions, comments, let me know, and I'll catch y'all next time. I invite you to check out my podcast, the Faders Up Podcast, a podcast about pro audio and beyond. Season 3 is now underway, and in this season, we'll be doing a lot of topics requested by listeners. So if you have a topic you want to hear discussed on the podcast, email us, DM us, or join us in our Facebook group, Faders Up Podcast, and let us know. And if you haven't checked out the podcast yet, I have a link in the description that'll take you to the page.